Welcome everybody to our first of hopefully many of our What the Fuck Wednesdays. It's a new thing we're
What
going
the
to try to do
fuck?
once a month to just talk about the things that are going on and make us say, what the fuck? And there's a lot of that going on.
What the fuck?
Yeah. Oh, I forgot. I'm Chris. This is Kai. We are Kinky
Ah.
Politics. So, I don't know. You want to start off or you want me to go?
Yeah, let's start off. Everybody, if you can't tell, Chris is having a hard Wednesday. And so this is where What the Fuck Wednesday was born out of, really. Chris having a shitty Wednesday. And we can't wait to tell you what the fuck is going on. But I had a shitty Tuesday talking about a celebrity right now who you all know and love, and I also know and love, Adele. I was talking about that to a friend of mine who is also from Chris's hometown, Indiana.
Home state.
And yes, excuse me, home state. And not hometown. I'm not 100% sure where he's from. I want to say Terre Haute, but I cannot remember. Anyway, irrelevant.
Yep.
He's got a black daughter, a biracial daughter, but a black daughter, a black girlfriend. And he's pretty knowledgeable about black culture. He joined a black fraternity in college, and he's been my friend for a really long time. We had a huge disagreement, which we often do. He and I disagree quite a bit, but this controversial photo that came out recently of Adele in a Jamaican bikini, a Jamaican flag bikini, and her Bantu knots, which Bantu is a definitively black hairstyle. I put up this post where this professor, I think of African Studies, was talking about how this was cultural appropriation. And it couldn't be more cultural appropriation. And so I put it up, and it's just, for me, it's just like, I'm not even angry about these things. It's more like, oh, here it goes again, right? But I think what angered me was having to have the discussion with my friend about it, my white friend about it, and then having to say to him, well, why don't you ask another black person, since you don't appreciate what I have to say about this? Why don't you find out from another black person who has a varied experience as a black person, and of which you trust, one of our friends. He goes to that black person who says, no, she's not appropriating.
That backfired on you, huh?
It didn't all the way, because I already had prefaced it and said a lot of people are not able to see that this is cultural appropriation, especially black people, because black culture and black style has always been looked down upon. So when it's celebrated in a very obvious way, it's hard to really denote what it is. You think like, wow, this person really likes me. But in actuality, she's wearing a fucking costume. It might as well be Halloween. And the reason why it might as well be Halloween is because she can take out her hair and no longer be black, have a black hairstyle. She can take out this hair, okay? And she gets to be Adele. She gets to be white Adele. And when I say gets to be, I'm sounding like it's like a great thing. But all I'm trying to say is that it comes with privileges. It comes with the privilege of being white. She gets to take off her hairstyle and it not be a black trend anymore. She gets to go back to having the choice of not being black. Unlike anybody with black skin, you will always be seen as a black person. I never have the choice. I could be born with straight hair as a black person, which many black people are. I could be born with blonde hair. I will always be looked at as for many people sometimes are confused about my ethnicity, but in many cases, people see me as a Black person, and I move through the world being seen as a Black person.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's not something I invented. That's not something I want. That's that's a construct of which was invented before my time by a bunch of white people who said, this is how we're going to delineate, and it is what it is. So this is the reason why it's cultural appropriation versus cultural appreciation. And he was like, Joey was like, this, excuse me, not Joey, whoop. You don't know who that is?
Bleep that
Yeah,
out.
I've got tons of friends named that. But anyway, he was like, she was appreciated. She's always been on, like, and advocated for Black people. She's always been down for the Black cause. And it was a carnival. It was the right context. She's wearing she's celebrating, the Caribbean carnival.
Yeah.
And
Sorry.
and it's like, huh?
I was just gonna say real quick context on this carnival she was at. It was a carnival started, I believe, in the 60s in London in response to some kind of massacre. I'm not 100% sure about the massacre or whatever happened, but I believe it was in response to some kind of massacre against Black people from Jamaica, because that was a predominantly Black Jamaican neighborhood. I think it's been gentrified now and it's predominantly white, but they've continued to have this Notting Hill Carnival every year. And I guess I've heard a lot of Black hip hop artists from the UK comment on it, and they've kind of complained about the fact that it's kind of been changed and gentrified and I guess appropriated in a lot of ways. Like if you go to it now, according to them, versus like in the 80s or 90s, it's a lot more white businesses and a lot less focus on Jamaican culture. But it did start off as kind of like to pay homage to Jamaican culture and Jamaicans in Britain that had kind of been, well, not kind of been, had been very fucking mistreated and discriminated against for a while. So because nobody in the U.S. is going to know what the Notting Hill Carnival is, but it's a big fucking deal in the UK. It's like one of the biggest ones they have. So, and there's a lot of story and backstory to it. And the Bantu,
Yeah.
for people that don't know, Bantu is the biggest, I don't know if it would be considered an ethnic group, but they are the largest, I believe, ethnic group in Africa.
They're a tribe. They're a tribe.
Yeah, but
it's a tribe.
because I know they started off in like Cameroon, Nigeria area, and then eventually spread like all the way down through Central South Africa and a little bit over towards East Africa, like maybe a couple thousand years ago. Nobody quite knows exactly how that went down or what happened, but they kind of spread out from West Africa and make up the majority of the African population now.
I don't think they make the majority, but they are a very large tribe.
Yeah.
But that hairstyle is a definitively African hairstyle, and there are tons of Africans who are white, but particularly it's a Black hairstyle.
Yeah, I've never heard it called that before, but as soon as I saw that picture, I was like, oh shit, she wore that. Oh man. As soon as I saw that picture, I was like, what was she thinking?
And it's like, it's interesting too. And I appreciate you giving us a rundown about it because that's what's happening is a lot of these styles and a lot of these definitively Black cultural things are getting sort of whitewashed or blanketed on, which is, in a lot of respects, it is what it is. But I'm not going to pretend and not call it what it is when this is actually happening. So I'm like, he said to me, he's like, there are many Black people who disagree and say that she was actually appreciating culture. She wasn't appropriating at all. And I said, yeah. And this is very hard for a lot of Black people, a lot of white people, a lot of people to see, because white supremacy is so insidious, it's so complex, and it's so systemic that it's hard to identify what it is when it's happening in a lot of cases. You think it's about appreciation, but she doesn't have to wear her hair in that particular style. She doesn't have to, she can change her hair back to what it was, which is a luxury in it of itself, which is essentially a costume piece, okay? And if you're gonna do that with a Black style, I'm gonna call it for what it is. And he's like, no, he's like, no, that's not the case. And why would some Black people say that it isn't culturally appropriating? And it's like, a lot of Black people have issues with with accepting who they are, okay? And a lot of most Black people have been told that their culture or who they are isn't good. And it's been passed down from years and years and years and years and years of this shit, right? Mm-hmm. So when somebody does an outright thing as to say, look at me, I'm one of you, it's gonna, for some people, it may feel good. It may feel like, wow, that's a nice gesture of solidarity. But the truth is those types of styles were looked down upon if Black people wore them. And they still are today. In some states, you can't wear dreadlocks, they're banned. In some, Black styles are not allowed. They're illegal in, not in some states. I mean, like in schools or in businesses, you can't wear them because they're deemed unprofessional.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is to say that at its root, we don't accept who you are. We don't like who you are, right? So now, fast forward, not even fast forward, just, it just so happens one day, Adele, who has made most of her, who has made her music career off of Black music. She has a definitively Black sound, and she gets to be celebrated as a white woman who's got this great, beautiful, big, lovely voice, but is influenced by Black artists and sounds like a Black person. So she gets to profit off of that. And in addition to that, she gets to costume and wear these styles whenever she wants. And that is deemed as appreciating to people who don't recognize who are not able to see fully what white supremacy looks like. So this was my what the fuck. This was my what the fuck Tuesday, and I had to break it down and break it down and break it down. And and I had to talk to my girlfriend. I had to talk to my girlfriend, and I'm like, trying to, and she's like, I just don't understand. She's like, I can't believe that you had to continue to tell him that this is your culture, and he's asking you why you feel it's appropriating, and he's saying it is not appropriating, yet this is your culture. Mm. It's like, it's already like, what the fuck are you, what are you doing? This is my culture. It's not for you to tell me you're not doing something.
Yeah.
So, and I'm like, yeah, and I had to go, and she's like, and she's like, it is what it is. Colorism with Black people is still a really big thing. Colorism in most cultures is still a really big thing outside of white culture, outside of I shouldn't say white, but people who are Caucasian. Colorism is still a very, very big thing. And this whole race.
It's definitely a thing in white people too.
Colorism?
Yeah.
What is it? I've never heard of it with white people.
Pale-skinned white people are the least attractive people to white people. Like, you want to have that, be able to tan and kind of get that summer tan. If you can't tan, white people, you're less attractive to white people. Like, growing up in my community, like, girls who could get tan, like really, really tan, they were like the hot girls. And then the girls who were like pale, they were looked at as unattractive. And being a pale, pasty white guy myself who couldn't tan if I wanted to, I definitely noticed it. Like, when you can get that kind of olive complected skin with lots of time in the sun, you are a more attractive white person than people that are kind of more towards the albino side of things like me.
Now, first of all, you're not albino, and secondly, this idea is recent, because before, in earlier days, the whiter you were, even in white culture, we've studied this. The whiter you were, the more beautiful you were. The more pale in complexion you were, the more docile. The more
how it's changed just in white, because it's still the same in like all other cultures. Like the lighter you are, it's like praised, but for some reason, in white culture, they're obsessed with, like, at least in America, I don't know if this is globally, because here in Australia maybe it's different there, but here it's like there's this obsession with white people to try and get this olive skin complexion, whether that be through a tanning bed or actual going to the sun or even spray tan. Like there's a reason spray tans are a fucking multi-billion-dollar business, and it's not anybody other than white people get those things. Like, it's just crazy.
Well, it's interesting because my friend said that as well. He said, everybody wants to be black. At the end of it, everyone wants to be black. Everybody wants to tan. And I'm like, but nobody actually wants to be black.
No.
No one actually wants to go through life being like, yes, I want to be a black person because it's outside of the fact that it's cool, okay? But when you actually have to experience and work through life, being a black person, being a darker skinned person, someone on that spectrum, life is harder. It's more challenging because of the issues you face around race. And I do think there's something when we talk about the whole tanning thing, and now, it's coming out that, like, more and more white people prefer tans. And yes, it's in Australia, and yes, it's in like other places in Italy, for example. If you've got a nice olive skin, blah, 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 it's considered beautiful and whatever. But I think all that is sort of like now starting to be okay, because because people try and dominate what they're scared of. People try and overpower what they're afraid of, which is why I think slavery, or why I think ownership over black people, or ownership over people who were darker skinned people became a thing. But I think that people also feared what they didn't know, and they also were intrigued by what they didn't know. What is that black skin? What is that black hair? That's interesting. I like it, but I'm not supposed to like it because that's different than me. It's weird. So I think that with the progression of like time and just like things evolving, people are just coming to and being like, well, actually, like if I were to really say this, like I do kind of like, like a little bit of color in my skin, or I do have an attraction to black women. You know what I mean? Like, or I do have an attraction to, it's starting to become like, okay, it's okay to let your ideas and feelings out now. So
I do have a quick question. So,
yeah,
because well, as I said briefly before we talked about this on camera, I definitely think Adele was probably aiming for cultural appreciation. But I also know if I was in Adele's life and she said, hey, I'm going to wear this out to the carnival today, I would have been like, girl, take that off now. Take it off now. Nothing good can come from this. It's going to be perceived as, cultural appropriation, and this ain't the right climate for that. This is not the climate to be wearing that out. Like how many famous celebrities do you have to see make the same mistake before you realize like what's going to happen? What do you feel the difference is between appreciation and appropriation? Because based on like what you were saying earlier, it sounds like Eminem would be guilty of cultural appropriation by being a white rapper. And like, I don't know, it also kind of makes me feel kind of confused about like when black women straighten their hair to have like white hair, like, is that cultural appropriation?
I'll explain that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll explain that. So with the whole thing about white women straightening their hair, first of all, there are many black people who were born with straight hair. That's one. And secondly, there are many black people who, in order to assimilate here, because they were told, not even here, but in Western culture, they were told that their own hair, the way it was and how they were wearing it, was wrong, was unprofessional, was gross and disgusting. So they had to change, not because necessarily they wanted to, and this started in the beginning.
Yeah.
they had to change the way they were in order to adapt to this society, and they still weren't accepted.
Yeah.
So this started way back when. But you know, Black people who wear you know, straight hair and don't have straight hair, or wear wigs, or whatever the case may be, a lot of times it's because they need to do it to survive in that context. They need to make money, as an example. They got to go to work. That hairstyle, they're less likely to get a job. For example, as we know, Black women are less likely to get a job if they come to an interview with their natural hair. This is a proven statistic, you know. So that's one. And then with Eminem and culturally appropriating, Eminem always recognized the fact that he had a white mother, a white family, and he grew up the way he did, and he never made excuses about it. The way he dressed as well, despite being so involved in Black culture and immersed in Black culture, the way he dressed was his own. He wasn't like, I'm just gonna rip off a bunch of Black people and wear this whole like FUBU outfit.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I've always viewed Eminem's wardrobe as very stereotypical, like Black rapper. Like, I've never seen him dressed and been like, wow. Because like Lil Wayne is like one of the few well, now these rappers dress really weird with the skinny jeans, but Lil Wayne was the first rapper I remember seeing dressed in a way where I was like, what the fuck is he wearing? Like, who the fuck's wearing Vans and skinny jeans, dude? Like, with talking about skateboarding culture. Like, but most rappers all kind of dress pretty similar. Now, does Eminem have chains? I can't remember. I feel like I've never seen him with the chains.
I think he used to have like one little, like one little thin chain. The thing about Eminem is, and like also too, he wrecked his blonde hair. He literally said, I'm a white person and I am trying to do rap because I'm actually good at doing rap. Now,
he also did acknowledge, and I think it was his first big song, Slim Shady, or maybe his second big song, whatever that one was, but he had a line in there where he was talking about like basically his album sales have been as high as they are because he's white. Like, I remember,
and he recognizes that, but I think he makes no excuses about about who he is, how he's grown up. Sorry, someone's calling me. Who he is and how he's grown up, and how he's benefited from Black culture, and how he also sees himself in the world. We never get confused as like no one ever was like, whoa, Eminem is like, you know, a white person pretending to be a Black person. He never came out there like pretending to necessarily. His whole rap thing was very unique in the way he rapped. He didn't put on a voice. He didn't put on an act. He was pretty unique. And I think that in that, people could say, wow, he's benefiting off of a notoriously Black thing, thing, and doing it his own way. In which case, like, he's not directly in costume or mimicking some other Black person's style in this approach. It's like, he's like, no, I'm doing a piece of art here, spoken word, or poetry here, and I am doing it the way I know how, based on my culture, what I was immersed in, my family, and it's my own. And I think that that's a whole different thing than just putting on a hairstyle and then taking it off.
So would you feel Adele's career has been appropriating Black culture, or just because earlier?
I think I don't think she's been appropriating Black culture. I think she's been benefiting from Black music.
Okay.
And she's been able to sell black sounding music as a white person and get lots of money for it and seen very well. So I guess in some regards that sort of makes sense, because it's like she's taking a culture of which isn't her own and literally mimicking it. But the thing that is a little bit different about her is her presentation. Her presentation is totally different. She doesn't come out there like trying to be black culture. She comes out there as she thinks, as Adele is, I guess, as this white person. She doesn't deny that. But her sound and her music and her, you know, it's kind of like, what's his name? I forget his name, but R&B singer, married Paula Patton.
Oh, Robin Thicke.
Mm-hmm. He's a similar type. And sometimes I actually feel like he puts on this black voice when he talks.
Something about that dude makes me want to pimp slap him. I don't know what it is, but I know I love that dude, but I don't know. He's got some decent songs, but I love his voice, but something about him I just not a big fan of. I've never considered Adele's music black music, I guess. I don't know. Because I couldn't picture Beyonce singing Adele's hits. Like, if they were on a Beyonce album, I feel like they would sound very out of place.
But you're limiting black music to Beyonce?
What's that?
I said you're limiting black music to Beyonce?
No, she's the biggest black female music star right now. But I feel like if Beyonce, I don't know who else is even like a big black female music star right now.
What Adele is old black music.
Yeah, I definitely think she's
old black music, and that is our roots, is old black music, right? And so what she's been able to do is have similar or even average vocal ability, and there are other black people who are still doing old black music who will never get the notoriety, the fame or attention as she is because of the way she looks.
I always felt like her looks were kind of a barrier for her career because she's not a supermodel.
No, because what's enticing about her is that she's a large white woman with a huge voice who can sound like a black person and do black music. It's amazing. It's like you know, I don't know, like Jennifer Hudson, but not Jennifer Hudson. She's just like another type of black person, but she ends up being like an actual white person, you know? So it is what it is. I wouldn't say that, like, I wouldn't go as far as say appropriation at the moment. And I think that's because of how watered down everything has been. It's like, how washed and watered down everything has gotten. So black music now is getting really watered down or washed out. It's becoming very mainstream. So, you know, I'm not the first person to say that she's been profiteering off of black music. It's common, you know, it's not an unusual concept or idea. But
I guess for me, the weird thing is like, because I don't know, it's so weird because like Adele's music, I would consider black music 40, 50 years ago, but now that doesn't seem to be black music anymore. It doesn't seem to be, I think that's why she was so successful. Because I remember she had like 2 or 3 really amazing songs, maybe 4, but they sounded unlike anything you hear on the radio, which was why it was so amazing to people. It was like, wow, this is like fresh, because you haven't heard this sound in 40 or 50 years.
But there are other black people who are doing the exact same thing.
I don't know how they're not getting on the radio, or maybe they don't have radio singers.
The way they look, because there's too many black people who are able to sing like that.
Because I don't know any black people making music.
She's not the first, and she's not the last person to be doing that shit. Yeah. There's still, I mean, I just saw a guy here in Australia, an American artist guy who's still doing. He kind of has Labyrinth. You know Labyrinth? The UK singer? Huh?
I thought that was a movie with David.
No. Labyrinth, the UK singer, is famous. He's got a similar type of, he's got old black music, okay? but he's never reached the notoriety of Adele.
Mm.
And he's her colleague, and he's more talented.
I feel like that's the same in like all, I mean, because you're an actor, you know the same thing. Like there are plenty of like really talented actors that never make it over some of these people that do. And you're like, how's that? It's the same thing in music. Like I know for a fact there are like much better musicians and, well, hip hop's my favorite genre, but I know there are tons of like amazing hip hop artists that never blow up. And I can't figure out why compared to the people that do that aren't very good. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, but hold on. You cannot ever erase the power of being white, the power of being, you can never erase it. It will always be there.
Okay.
There's just so much power in it, so much lever, there's so much ability to move. You know, my friend said to me, it's tough. And he's like, I feel bad for you. He goes, I feel bad for you because you see things in such a black and white way. And it's tough if you can't see gray. And I said, even you telling me that it's tough for me because I can't see gray is a privilege in it of itself. You can see gray. I'm not afforded that luxury to see gray because I move through the world as someone who's seen as a black, I move through the world being seen as a black person. I didn't invent that. I didn't make this rule for myself, but you're now telling me that I need to see gray and that's tough for me. And it's like, but I want to see gray. Of course I want to see, but I want other people to see gray too. And those other people don't see gray.
Yeah.
And this is why there's so many black people dying in the streets right now. And we're catching it on camera and everybody knows about it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I could go on and on about this shit. But speaking of black people dying in the streets and camera, let's talk about these Kenosha protests.
Yeah.
And Trump, give me the 2 cents. Give me the good word, Chris.
Oh, man. I don't know if it's been said on here yet. I definitely know we've talked about it quite a bit. I'm not a huge Joe Biden fan. I had not planned on voting for Joe Biden. There's still a month to go. I had not planned on it. But then this week, Donald Trump decided he wanted to go to Kenosha. I believe it was the mayor begged him not to come. Like, please do not come. Pretty sure the victim's father or mother, or maybe a combination of multiple family members, also begged him not to come. I'm sure there were many other groups in the city begging him, do not come. Please, you're only going to make things worse. But he said, F that, I'm coming. I'm Donald Trump. I do what I want. So I was kind of like hoping, praying that maybe he might just go and say some stereotypical politician thoughts and prayers bullshit and keep it moving. Best case scenario. I knew he wasn't going to do anything positive. I figured maybe he'd just go there for a publicity stunt to try and pretend like he gave a fuck. For, this is an election campaign and election season. He's down. But instead of doing that, he goes there, I don't even think he meets with any, like, the community leaders or anything like that. Doesn't meet with the mayor, doesn't meet with any of those people. He gives a speech. I can't remember if it was at the police station or the police union hall or something like that, but it was at a law enforcement thing after he met with law enforcement leaders or whatever the hell they are, and gives some bullshit speech and announces that he's going to donate U.S. taxpayer dollars, by the way. He's donating $5 million to the small businesses in Kenosha that were damaged by looting and rioting, which I don't even know how many businesses that is or if that's, anything about that. Because the town's not that big. It's 100,000 people. And they only really had rioting for like one day. And it didn't seem that widespread. So I can't imagine how many businesses were really destroyed by it. But he's donating $5 million U.S. taxpayer dollars to that. And then he's donating, I shouldn't say donating, he's giving $42 million from U.S. taxpayers to Kenosha's police force to hire more police and hire more prosecutors to go after and arrest and jail protesters. So obviously this is only going to inflame things and piss people off even more, I'm sure it makes his base feel really great because all they care about is owning the libs, whatever the fuck that means. But too stupid to even realize they are liberals too, because their whole ideology is based on liberalism too, you idiots. But regardless of that fact, that this is what this guy does, and I'm like, fuck, I'm gonna have to vote for Joe Biden. Like this mother, like this is just some straight up. I mean, fuck, even George Bush would have done this. Like Reagan wouldn't have done this, and they were fucking horrible. But this guy, I'm just like, fuck. Like, it just feels like a nightmare that won't end at some point. And I feel like honestly, right now, this psychopath, the only thing that's standing between him becoming our first king dictator is basically the U.S. military, whether or not they're going to side with him or the Constitution, because I just don't see this motherfucker leaving. Like, if he loses the election, he's gonna claim it was fake, and then he's basically gonna force the military to decide: are we gonna remove Trump by force, or are we gonna basically just become a dictatorship? Because this is how these things happen. Like when you look at how dictatorships happen, this is how it happens. The people like Trump. Because I remember 4 years ago, I worked with a couple people that disliked Hillary, which I can't blame anybody for that because I disliked Hillary quite a bit. There's a lot to dislike about her. So they disliked Hillary. They weren't voting for Hillary. So their options were either not to vote or to vote for Trump. And a couple of them that I used to work with, they were telling me they were going to vote for Trump. And I was just like, what? So I was just trying to warn them. I'm like, are you guys aware of the dictator tendencies this guy is displaying? This guy is testing the dictator waters. Like he's saying things that dictators historically have always said before they became dictators. Now, luckily, a couple of those people that I know voted for Trump are now 100% against him. So that gives me some sign of optimism. But obviously, he's still doing well enough in the polls to where the vast majority of his people have not turned, and they haven't woken up to reality. Our only hope right now, I guess, is that these Republicans that have disliked Trump always maybe don't vote for him. Because I know they voted for him the first time because, I don't know, for some reason they buy into this Fox News crap that Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton are socialists that want to make America the Soviet Union, despite the fact that nothing on their record indicates that they at all care for socialism. So it's just...
You said Joe Biden and Hillary.
What's that?
You said Joe Biden and Hillary.
Well, no, I'm saying that they were calling Hillary a socialist. They called Obama a socialist.
Oh,
They're calling Biden like Trump's campaign whole thing right now is basically I'm going to keep you safe, and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are radical left socialists that want to turn you into Cuba or Venezuela. And I'm like, I don't understand how people are believing this. Like, Joe Biden's closer to Ronald Reagan politically than he is to Castro. So it's like, even Barack Obama, when he was president, admitted that he is governed as a moderate Republican. Like he said, in the 70s or 80s, my policies would be moderate Republican. But they're still calling him a socialist, and people are believing that. So it's like, I don't know. America's just like, I don't know what to make of it anymore. It's like, reality doesn't exist. Facts don't matter. Nothing matters other than your team winning. It's like I live in a world of two cults right now, and nothing you say to them can reach through their brain. It's frustrating. But the Republican cult is the one that's a little more terrifying right now because they favor some very dictator type stuff, and they have a history of really being down to discriminate against a lot of freaking people. And it's just terrifying right now because I'm like, one of my best friends from my hometown, I was in his wedding, like a brother to me, never into politics at all before Trump. Diehard Trump guy now. Like, it really put a strain on things. Like, and he told me it's like a little over a year ago, he said he felt sorry for people with my worldview or something like that. And I was just like, man, it put such a strain on things. Like, I would always visit him when I would go home. Last time I went home, or maybe last 2 times I went home, I have not reached out to him to try and go visit him because I'm just like, I don't know how you wrap your head around that. Like, I can't look at this person who used to be like a brother to me I was like my best friend for like 15 years, and now to know he's supporting a dictator, like, and proudly doing it, posting those posts like after George Floyd thing, like play stupid games, win stupid prizes, shit like that. And I'm just like, dude, what the fuck, man? That could the police could kill your kids. Like, you understand, like this whole letting police murder citizens is not just like unique to like that situation. Like, police in every state and every city can kill you. Just because your police are choosing not to do so right now does not mean they cannot do so in the future. And the precedent has already been set legally that they can do it, and you can't do shit about it. How would you feel if that was your son? Like, just, I don't know. Trump's like broken America's brain though. Like, the worst part about it is I can't, because I'm like one of these people, like, I need to understand things. If I don't understand something, like, I will do some research and some reading and listen to people kind of share perspectives so I can wrap my head around like this. But with this Trump thing, I can't find any way to like understand it where it makes sense to me. And it's terrifying me because I don't want to live through a dictatorship. And I don't know how to shoot a gun. Like, I'm going to have to learn how to shoot a gun if we're going to go back. Because I'm going
to better work on it. Chris, you better work on it. Yeah.
I'm not going to passively let it happen.
It's a real hard reality that we're living in right now. And he's got a 50-50 chance of being elected. And, you know, I always want to think positively about this stuff, you know, but it's not enough to think positively. And I think the only way we're going to be able to do anything is to get other people to not vote for him. Like, to literally vote for Biden, as much as I know, which I still don't understand, but I can respect the fact that, like, you don't like what you see with Biden and Harris, and you don't align with their policies. But the truth of the matter is it's going in a direction of which is a bit safer and a bit more American than going with Trump. And we cannot have him back in office again. And if we do have him in office again, this is where we know it's going to lead. So I think it's part of our job to try and get people, to rally people together and be like, we gotta vote for the lesser. We gotta vote for Biden and Harris. Otherwise, this is what we have. This is what we get.
Tell people who to vote for, but I will say this incident and the incident during the protest, when he had the police start firing rubber bullets and clearing protesters before curfew just so he could walk across the street to get that photo op with that Bible at that church. Those are the two moments that have made me think long and hard about voting for Joe Biden. Those are two things that made me really consider it.
This is what you're gonna get. Do you know what I'm saying? It's either you vote for him and that's what you get, or you don't vote for him and, you know, you try and get other people to vote for him. Because it's not like there's no like gray about it. You don't get to fall in a gray. So we either have him or we don't have him.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no choices here.
I will say one choice. Go ahead.
Sorry, the only two choices that we have is we vote for him or we vote for Biden and Harris. And the truth is, if we it's just exactly how Obama came. You know what I mean? I was part of his whole campaign thing, especially even when I didn't really want. In the beginning, I didn't really care for him. I still was part of it. And I was still part of it because I was like, I knew this had to happen. I knew it had to happen for something else to happen. And so that's where I'm at, you know, is trying to rally people to not vote for him. But not voting is voting for him. So
the only positive thing I do like about Trump not about him personally, but just what the effect his presidency has had, as he has caused the left in America to mobilize and actually start fighting back and speak, like, really, like, in a way I've never seen in my entire lifetime. Um, so, and I definitely feel we need that in America because we don't have a left in America. You have a right and a center right party. You don't have anything left of center really in America to choose from. So the fact that he is kind of coalescing the left gives me hope maybe that we could have something left, like the country can start moving left, because we've been moving right for 40 or 50 years at this point.
Of course the country will start to move left.
What's that?
If we get back, I said, of course the country will start to move left as soon as we get to Biden in.
Well, that's what we thought with Obama too. That's why I'm kind of concerned with. That's why.
What happened?
Well, that's the same thing we thought with Obama.
No, that is not what we thought with Obama.
Because we were complaining about George Bush being a fascist dictator for 8 years, and then we thought we were going to elect Obama and start changing course, but we just kind of kept going the same course.
The interesting thing is we put all the onus on Obama, and it's like Obama did the little he could do as the first Black president. He didn't have Democrats in that House.
His first 2 years, they had the votes to do whatever, to pass any bill they wanted through Congress. Republicans could not stop them.
We are not on the same page, but he was the first Black president in that office. The little he could do was listen to everybody who was there and go along with what he needed to go along. He could advocate for some things, but he couldn't just change things up 2 years into this thing.
I'm not putting it all on Obama, because the Democrats that were in Congress were equally as responsible, because when Barack Obama ran for president, he promised a health care plan with a public option. But it was the Democrats in Congress, not all the Democrats, because we have conservative and liberal Democrats too. It was conservative Democrats that made it to where we could not get a public option. And
you're mad about this? We got Obamacare. We actually got Obamacare.
I know.
We actually got it. Okay, and that's what you're mad about? That is probably the biggest thing in his presidency. But getting Biden and getting Harris in, facilitates a change, facilitates the change, because now people are woke to the fact that shit needs to happen, otherwise we'll blow up some shit. Because people are going crazy. People are currently going crazy.
The problem is they never push Democrats when Democrats are in office. They only push Republicans.
I think that we're going to see something. I mean, let's hope. Let's hope that we see something different if those two get elected, but I don't think we will.
Yeah, I hope this stuff doesn't stop, because we can't have a repeat of what happened under Obama, where they just didn't put pressure on Democrats for 8 years because they were so happy not to have George Bush. And then 8 years of Obama happening.
I just really feel like you're forgetting that we're in a different climate. We literally have basically someone who is testing the waters of dictatorship and who is showing us this is a completely different climate.
I feel like
he's literally condoning the death. What?
I feel like the Republicans have kind of been increasingly testing the dictator waters for a while, because like Reagan did a lot of fucked up shit that was like, Nixon did a lot of fucked up shit, Bush did a lot of fucked up shit that just kept moving the dictator meter closer and closer towards a dictatorship. And then like all the stuff like we did after 9/11, like Patriot Act and all that shit, like that's different.
But we have never seen a president undo all the shit that was done before. Undo.
Nobody's even tried. Nobody even tries to when they get in office. They just keep allowing it.
So this is insane. This is insane, and this has to do with this has to do with lives hanging in the balance. This is totally different. Totally different. It's a completely different climate. But I know the stress you're going through, and now with the addition of, you think about, as you mentioned earlier off the phone with me, work.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I work for one of our big major airlines in America. at the, I think, fifth busiest airport in the country. I got a furlough notice, what is it, a month ago, a little over a month ago, which meant that I was going to be getting laid off October 1st was the plan. Just yesterday, I was notified that I will not be getting laid off now. So that's great news. They have reduced our hours to 30 hours a week now. So we're only getting part-time hours, and that's been the case for about the past maybe 6 weeks, which kind of, depending on how you interpret the CARES Act, violates the CARES Act, because the airlines were given like $50 billion, I think. They were given $50 billion under the agreement that they didn't lay anyone off and that they didn't reduce anyone's pay. So what they did was they reduced our hours and claimed they didn't reduce our pay, but my paychecks are smaller now. I make less money now. So I very much feel my pay has been reduced. And another really shady thing that they have done, which I don't even know if this is legal, is they kind of encouraged a lot of our employees to take voluntary leave. It's called company offered leave. You can do it for like 3 or 6 month blocks. But what people did is they voluntarily left their job, and then they went on unemployment. And you're not, in America, you're not allowed to go on unemployment if you voluntarily chose to become unemployed. You have to be involuntarily laid off. So what happens in unemployment is if you claim you were involuntarily laid off, they submit that to your company, and your company either has to say, yes, that's correct, or no, that's not correct. We dispute that. Our company told us in advance, while encouraging us to do this, they would not dispute these claims. So our government, or our company, took $50 billion. Not my company didn't get all the 50 billion. I think we only got like 12 billion of the 50. We got $12 billion, and then offloaded thousands and thousands of our employees onto unemployment. So that's the taxpayers paying the same company twice, basically, to keep these employees paid. And then the craziest part is like the coworkers that took unemployment were getting paid twice as much to be unemployed because of the way we did our stimulus relief bill here, or our COVID relief kind of thing here. So my coworkers that took leave were sitting at home making twice as much money to sit at home on unemployment as the people who were continuing to work and were being praised as essential workers, and all these commercials these companies were doing talking about how much they love essential workers and how valuable we are and how much they care about us and all that stuff. They don't pay us like they care about us. It took them, a month after COVID happened before they started giving us any protection from COVID and all this stuff. And it's like, but the craziest part about it too is our unions begged us to support this shit. Like the unions came to us and begged us to support it. And I'm just like looking around now, like as a working class person, as an essential worker in America, who can you trust that really gives a fuck about you? Because like Democrats begged us to support that bill. Our unions begged us to support it. Our companies are out there doing propaganda and doing these commercials, making it seem like they care about us and love us, even though they pay us less than it costs to live. They'll gladly throw us on the street if it helps their stockholders. And I'm just kind of like, what the fuck? It just seems like dark days ahead for the American working class, because it's the one form of discrimination that's still allowed in this country is classism. Like, it's
not the one form of discrimination.
Well, it's the one that's allowed. It's the one that you're allowed to engage in without being condemned or called out or shamed or any of that stuff.
Well, racism is still allowed and not condemned. I mean, Trump just gave $5 million to, like, he literally did not condemn that. He's like, actually,
well, yeah,
good work.
Like, if Trump was a regular employee, like if Trump was a CEO of a company, or if Trump was an employee, Trump would have gotten fired long ago for many things he said. The fact that politicians get away with this is crazy to me. I don't understand it. And it's only Republicans. If Trump was a Democrat, he would have been forced out of office long ago. But I mean, Republicans are basically the only people that can say these things and get away with them still. But if I said that shit, I'd be fired tomorrow. Like I would have if I said half the stuff Trump said, I would be fired on the spot. Like they would call me and be like, "You're fired."
But I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe not. I mean, like, look at these people who are still put on administrative leave for killing Black people. Like, I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe
Yeah,
you'd
the
win the
social
case.
media. I'm just mean like the general public. The general
Oh,
public
I see.
looks down
Yes.
upon them. Whereas like at the Republican National Convention, I can't remember who it might have been Trump or somebody else. They were speaking about I think it was Trump. He was saying something about the suburbs. He was talking about
Yes.
Democrats want to build affordable housing in the suburbs and let these poor people come live in your communities, and we're not going to allow that. I'm like, dude, that's the most. You're talking about poor people like they're fucking vermin, like
Yes.
there's something like they're a contagious disease that will spread to your children if they're around you. What the
I
fuck?
watched that.
And
I watched that.
the
It was
Democrats didn't say shit about it.
unbelievable.
They didn't call him out. Nobody called him out on it. Nobody said anything about it. I'm like, what? And
Because it's like, what do you say? You expect that this is coming out. You
yeah,
expect that he'll always say this shit.
I don't know. I
It's
feel like this is a new level of like I I don't know, maybe because I don't follow Republicans nearly as much. I tend to follow more Democrats and like socialists, but I don't follow Republicans nearly as much. I don't watch Fox News that much, so maybe this is common, regular speak on Fox News and in that circle. But
no,
I've never,
I was very aware just based on what he has always done with his housing stuff. He's always had housing discrimination
yeah.
stuff with all of his buildings and shit. Like, this is not new. It's not unusual.
Well, it's the same. That's the thing too. Is like housing's like the biggest thing for me because like the state I live in, Colorado, and the Denver area, um, housing is a big freaking issue right now because it's so expensive. Like housing has gotten so expensive compared to wages. Like I make a median income where I live.
Mhm.
I cannot afford to rent a studio apartment on a median income. Like there's no way. No way could I rent a studio apartment on a median income. And we have a Democratic controlled House, Senate, and governor. We've had them in place for going on 3 years now, I think. They've had control of the state for 3 years. And, you know, a lot of the people on the more progressive side of the party are trying to beg them to do something to allow us to do rent control because it's the
Mhm.
only way we can possibly imagine like ever being able to afford rent in our city. But my Democratic state rep, when I brought that up to her, said rent control is telling business owners how much money they can make. I was like, you're the Democrat. You're the Democrat. And you just really said that? Like, do you, it's just, and, you know, every major city pretty much in this country has Democratic mayors, majority Democrat city councils, and they're not providing affordable housing. Because the thing that nobody wants to talk about is Democrats take money from property developers and these people too. So it's like when you're taking money from property developers, when it comes time to pass housing zoning stuff and green light housing additions and apartment complexes, whose side are you going to take? Because you're going to get reelected either way because all they have to do every election cycle is say, well, if you don't elect me, the racist is going to get in and it's going to get worse. And it's just like, I don't know what to do anymore because it's like, you just see this cycle keep continuing and it's like, oh, we got to break the cycle, but I don't know how you do it.
You get angry.
Yeah. I'm hoping it's going to happen here because
Anger. Righteous anger. I see you. You're smoking, boy. You're
yeah, so
smoking. Mm-hmm. What the fuck Wednesdays?
yeah. Hmm.
Anyway, this feels like a good send off. We'll zen out. Great to be with you. Like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.
Oh my God. Orange is not my new black.